Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I make for Dinnerhe as part of the custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the track on the screen off of an album, I think it's the latest album from Joanna Wang titled Hotel Laru. And if we switch down to here, we have Strange Beast, track number 17, which I believe, as I understand, is the one we're going to be checking out today. So we're going to listen through it from start to finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. Very wistful with the guitar takes immediately. And the woodwinds almost make it sound sort of mystical.
He dropped to his knees, but in his eyes a strange delight. She had went with all of her paper nights.
So it's sort of freeform, isn't it? We're allowing the lyrics to control the direction they express and rhythmically of it, as well as harmonically, of course. It's interesting, it's almost like a schoolgirl kind of choir aesthetic there with the vocals, you know, like a choir, you could imagine that. I also want to comment on the drums coming at this point now, you know, a minute 30 in. It's allowing a sense of surety with the way we've structured things with the strings, the keys there, you know, everything else. It's great, you know, great composition development. With those 16ths and 30 seconds on the hi-hats. And so it's quite busy with the neoclassical stylings of some of the guitar parts there, the bluesy phrasings of the organs contrasting with that. And like when you've got everything sort of together, it oddly enough sort of suits and swells really neatly. You have the vocals to provide a precedent for what's going on there thematically. So I still like a bit more context to really sort of understand what the track is about. But it's just the way that we get away with so much going on, you know, musically is wonderful. We know exactly how to niche it.
Crash against the cliffside on a moonlit night. Soon it will be forevermore alongside. Wanting you, what isn't true. And into the night
Further instrumental, kind of like a is that like a synth guitar or something like that? It kind of sound like some modulated a bit. Or like a keytar, I suppose. petering down to a minor. Not really sure what to make of this track. I think lyrically I'm unsure. I don't think I got all the words through clearly. Still, I have really enjoyed the vocal performance. It's just I'm not sure about the story, but everything else is sounding pretty tight. I'm going to talk about that more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Joanna Wang off of their Hotel Aru album. This song being titled Strange Beast. Now, I didn't get all the words through clearly. I'm not sure what this track is about. I think part of that was the way that we sung. I don't think we were trying to sing the words super duper clearly with the enunciation, but what I think is going on there, which is kind of cool, is that we are trying to sort of explore melodies and passages there that are sort of secondary almost to what's going on with some of those really intense guitar and key passages there. What's being enough to sit on top of the different guitar lines, the organs, the bass, and such like that, and as well as the drum grooves and the shuffles that they had there with the 16th and 32nds and like done. Is it in a triplet actually? It could be 16th triplets there, but either way I think it's tremendous. I think that my guess at what it's about, they talk about the waves crashing and being on sort of like alone and then going into night or something like that. I kind of wonder whether this is like a beast where they are isolated and they could not ever have any kinsmanship and they are just forever destined to not have anything else apart from themselves. And it's like maybe this entire album is kind of like an invitation to explore different sort of fantasy concepts in a way where like it's sort of storytelling, I suppose. Of course, that's implicit. They're lyrics. We're meant to be telling a story. But I kind of look at other titles like You Lost Me at the Spanking Machine Tennis House, Who Fell in Love with the Neighbor's Boy. I'm kind of wondering if these are just sort of ideas. Like, I would think Dinnerhe mentioned this sort of being like, it makes them feel like they're at the climax of a horror movie. And I can understand that completely. It does, the organs are very spooky sounding. And I think it kind of like the chilled nature, not chilled as in relaxed. It was almost hauntingly beautiful, some of those vocal parts, especially when we got into that head voice there. The way we harmonized there kind of sounded like we went into our upper range there and it soared and it just kind of sat there like the mist on a freezing night with the moon in the sky. Now, Joanna is a great singer, and I think that the way that we sung those lyrics was very eerie sounding. And when I compare it to the rest, again, I still maintain it was secondary to the instrumental performance behind it in the sense that we were kind of guiding the person through the forest that was the music. And I wonder to myself, I think, could we have done anything to improve the performance? Do I want the words to be clearer? I think part of it was stylistically, that was the way we wanted to communicate. And in that regard, I've got to be honest about that. I'm not really sure if it's a criticism necessarily to say that I couldn't get the words through clearly. Is it that I need to simply pay closer attention and not necessarily try and listen to everything at once? Is it that I'm supposed to listen more clearly to Joanna? Is that the kind of angle we're going for here? Being transparent about not getting all the words through but clearly, but understanding that could be by design. Either way, we had great vocal technique. We were very comfortable in our head and chest voice there. We harmonized really neatly with everything else. Our expression and dynamic range was there for a T, and it's a great, like if this was the first time you'd heard Joanna Wang, you'd be fascinated by it, and I think that's more important than anything else. The track itself at 4 minutes 14 is just outside the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot that I personally prefer, where less than 2 minutes you're potentially missing out on context and not having enough time to sort of fully illustrate a tale, and more than 4 minutes if you've got similar themes throughout. You've got the same chord progression, that's just a bit too long to be stuck on that idea. And what I will note about Joanna Wang is that I think in terms of their ability to write music, it's incredible. Like they've got a lot of talent and creativity stored within there, and to kind of write, I'm assuming, given previous experiences listening through Joanna's work, that every single other track is probably going to be on par with this, and if that's so, it's going to be a hell of a ride. But focusing on this track specifically, this one had verses and I think it had choruses, but I think it was more about the actual music and the journey you were going on with the guitars and with the keys, then with the organs and the bass and the drums and the gradual layering of that. Again, you enter the scene with the guitars on the sides there. You're kind of wondering what the hell you got yourself into. A slightly different tones to those string parts as well to differentiate and make the track sound a bit bigger. You have Joanna eventually come in there, and then you get like the rhythm backing at the bottom with the low end of the bass, and then the drums with a really, really quick, intense shuffle there, almost to kind of make you wonder what rush you're going into. And I think it's only when you get those upper level sort of like lead and key parts, or the organ solo, that you really appreciate the vibrant intensity of what this composition is trying to be and what Joanna is trying to create. to sort of contrast the minimalism relatively of the speed and pace which we're singing to sort of focus on the effect of it. I think that the transitions between sections were seamless there, so often would either allow there to be whole round bars worth of parts for each sort of motif or progression, or would have parts of the vocals have a call and response between them of an entire bar or two's worth and then go back for further for another line there. And I think that structurally it made sense. There were several solo sections on top of the various vocal parts. It almost could be described as being through composed. I'm hesitant. I'd need to have another listen to confirm that. But I appreciate that it isn't more of a traditional. I like that we fleshed it out like this whilst there being no filler. I think that if I talk about a few of the instrumental parts I particularly enjoyed, I thought the guitar work was great there. It was quite technical and intricate there. We had minor triads there, and we had some extensions in there potentially, but almost occasional and accidental or incidental, where we just had more of a kind of not necessarily melancholic but kind of a spooky tone with those sixths and sevenths coming in there, but almost a little bit of dissonance occasionally, but not enough to really sort of feel it until the heavier elements came in or the more intense elements came in later on. I thought that we played the guitar really well. We were very creative with our phrasings of the various arpeggios and pick parts as well as the chords later on, and I thought that we didn't sit on idea for too long harmonically. We had several distinct sections there which were powered in part by that being the front of it, and ultimately just provided a really fantastic ground bit for the bass to come in and be a little bit more sort of active and presentable there. We were a little bit more sort of explorative of parts of the scale and root notes and mode, not necessarily the modes, but the bluesy and pentatonic scales a bit later on once we sort of established our pace rolling with those roots. But ultimately the bass was a nice foil for those guitars. The drums when they came in were exceptional. I know they were a bit later than some of the key and organ parts, but it's just, I loved again the work on the cymbals there. They're kind of that almost had an interesting tone to it. We weren't trying to have too clean of a guitar sound. It was kind of like how we had kind of chorus or kind of chimey effects on it, almost to sort of sound a bit more similar to the organ parts we had tonally and texturally. But the drums, there was a great amount. I think there was a room mic on it. You just had it kind of had a very kind of gritty tone to it in a sense there, and I think it was trying to let you know that something wasn't quite right. It wasn't that pristine, perfect situation. It wasn't meant to be as pristine sounding as the vocals, and I think that again, what made it really intimate, just going back to the vocals very briefly, is that the vocals were quite quiet in parts. You could tell that Joanna was really up to the mic like this, and that creates, again, it's like she's whispering in your ear, and it's very kind of almost a surreal thing. But the drums in contrast, when they came in, were compressed and they were rowdy and they were ready to get into it, and I think that was a nice way to build things up dynamically. The keys, when they came in, the organs or the synth parts that we had there, niched well on top of the existing guitar ideas, and I think they established a great sort of cohesion within the frequency spectrum there. It was nice and full in the mid to highs as well at that point, in the center of stereo field as well on the sides. And you could distinguish things neatly whilst it also not being too overwhelming. And you clearly then you had guitar solo sections later on with the organ coming in first. I think we had the organ solo there rolling with those bluesy scales, those pentatonics there, with some sort of neoclassical styling coming in with the guitars. And eventually we had several different solo instruments kind of going at the same time, and it was very, very busy. It was almost like it was that person singing about being alone and going into the night by themselves, and then suddenly they're noticing everything else around them, that conflict there between the instruments potentially, even though it seemed harmonious, it wasn't. So they then decide to leave that alone and move away, and that's when things continue to escalate again. I think that, thematically, with the understanding that I think that the key parts and any other elements there played neatly alongside the existing core elements of the composition and the arrangement, I think that the theme itself was meant to it was meant to sound lonely. It was meant to sound a little bit sad at the start. They're kind of quiet and sort of almost a little bit sort of like you're a pendant. You're just, no, there wasn't going to be a happy ending to this tale, and I don't think we ever got that. It resolved to the minor with that guitar near the end kind of fading down with a bit of a sizzle going wow there, with a bit of feedback from the guitars, a little bit of static from the synths, etc. on the other side, and we really just left feeling a sense of discontent, not because the song was written badly, but because it was almost like you were kind of rooting for the person who was alone and then realizing they would never find that commiserate. It's just sad, and I think that the chord choices there, in addition to the busyness relative and as well as the flexibility of the instrumental layers and theme within the tone, kind of left you wondering you know, like where things were going to happen next. It kind of made you wonder what the rest of the album was going to be like. Were these, again, disconnected ideas, or were they meant to sort of tie together to something? Either way, we created a world and an environment temporarily for that 4 minutes. We were enraptured by it. We had a lot. We have a fundamental understanding music theory and composition here. Joanna Wang is an extremely competent composer, and we understand very intently how to create the aesthetic we want, again with the spookiness of it and like the loneliness and stuff like that, the chord choices, the melodies. We know how to do a bell curve and the like the energy of a track there, and we know how to make the listener feel a certain way, and that was especially relevant here. So well done. I mean, you could almost like sympathize for the person in the story. And I think finally, just the studio recording, mixing, and mastering. I think it was strange. I want to comment that I think part of maybe the mystery was to make you feel like it was a strange situation, like you couldn't necessarily understand what they were trying to say. But the studio recording, mixing, and mastering was wonderful. I think that they did a fantastic job handling things with the you could hear the vocals, aside from not maybe getting all the words through clearly. You could definitely hear them. They had a great presence in amongst the guitars, bass, drums, the organs, the synths, the lead parts, etc. You know, we could. It was very palatable. It was interesting to listen to. There weren't any sort of harsh textures or issues with the way things were treated. I think the drums were not. They were a little bit kind of raw sounding, but it was again a nice contrast to what was going on with some of the sort of like more, I suppose, more kind of pretty spooky guitar elements as well as the organs and stuff. It had like elements of blues, kind of almost rock in it, as well as a little bit sort of fantasy. And I think that's kind of neat. It was nice to wind the stereo field. Things to say around in your headphones. The guitars were double tracked and everything like that. So with some of the organ parts there, it was very immersive. There was dynamic range. Things were not the same loudness all the time. And it was nice and loud without pumpings of the bus compression, and limiting was handled really well and effectively. This is my review of this track from an ex named Joanna Wang, titled Strange Beast, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and a Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SC Patrons video. Spiderhands out.